We're a bit late, everyone. There's a couple of technical difficulties, and unfortunately, one of our speakers is struggling to access Zoom. But I think we're going to go ahead anyways, and hopefully, Anissa will be able to join at some stage. But yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Rona MacDonald. I'm Senior Sustainability Advisor at the British Ports Association. So thank you very much, all of you, for coming along to this webinar today on sustainability in ports. We're going to focus on the role of ports in the energy transition, current strategies for reducing emissions, and any insights into recent and future projects, and how ports are preparing for new future green fuels. So just some quick housekeeping rules before I pass over to Megan here. So as you might have heard, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available once the webinar finishes. I will give our speakers, hopefully if Anissa is able to join as well, 10 minutes just to share their views on the subject. And then I'll open the floor to yourselves to ask some questions. So there is a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. It's different from the chat function. So if you're able to put all your questions that you may have into the Q&A function throughout the webinar at any point, and when we come around to the discussion, I'll direct them to Megan and hopefully Anissa as well. So again, if Anissa joins as well, if you're able to add in who you wish me to direct that question to as well, that would be great. So yeah, over to Megan. This is Megan Turner. She's the Environment and Sustainability Manager at the Port of Dover. And she's been working at the port for over 5 years now, and has been responsible for many areas such as managing the port's environment management system, calculating the carbon footprint, and leading on numerous projects. So I will hand over to you, Megan, if you'd like to share your screen and go ahead.
Yeah, as Ronnie said, hi, I'm Meg. I'm just going to share my screen now. Hopefully everyone can see that. Yeah. So just a little quick introduction to the Port of Dover first, just in case there's anyone here that isn't aware. So Dover Calais and Dover Dunkirk is the ferry route that everyone mainly knows us for. And that ferry route is responsible for £144 billion of trade every year, which is about 33% of the UK EU trade. We do also have cruise terminals, a cargo terminal, and marinas as well, but the ferry route does make up the majority of the trade on the port. So with that 33% of the UK EU trade obviously comes a lot of emissions. So the system as a whole, so both ports include, well, all three ports included, the vessels and the HGVs and tourist traffic on either end. It's about 1.1 million tonnes of carbon, which is 8% of UK international maritime emissions. So we're very aware that we're responsible for a really large part of those maritime emissions and really want to do something about that. So those 1.1 million tonnes, about 75% of that is the ferries. The actual ports themselves make up a really, really small portion of the overall emissions. So we've kind of looked at this at a couple of different routes of how do you look at it from what the ports can do, but how do we actually tackle this as a whole system? Because to make any sort of real difference, that's where we need to look at. So some of the current strategies that we have undertaken at the Port of Dover first. So this here is just one of the pages, there's a little snippet from our sustainability strategy. This kind of focuses mainly on the port-specific things that we've done so far. So we have a net zero target for scope 1 and 2 for 2025 and scope 1, 2 and 3 for 2030. Now that we've got to the end of 2023, that little figure there of 80% reduction since 2007 is a little bit out of date. We're now at 95%. Since 2007, which is really brilliant. That's just for our scope 1 and 2. We started monitoring our scope 3 emissions and reducing those as well. And then the green corridor is kind of the overall aim for us because we need to tackle that 75% of the emissions. Alongside our carbon targets, you see we've got a couple of other, we call them target zero. So those are just continual improvement targets that are over a range of topics. And we will be introducing more into those this year as well. So how have we made that 95% reduction in scope 1 and 2 first? It's been all sorts of little things as well as some bigger projects. So I've got some of the bigger projects here. We started purchasing REGO electricity in October 2016. So that's renewably sourced electricity. We also have some renewable energy production on site now. So from 2020, we had 1.3 megawatts go live, and then 0.25 megawatts went live in 2019. So in total, we have 1.55 megawatts across the port at the minute. We are looking to expand that as well in the next few years over different areas of the port that we can. A real big hitter for us in reducing our emissions was transitioning all of our landside plant machinery that includes our vehicles to HVO in March 2022. We then followed that up with our vessels in September 2022. So that's the port vessels, so our tugs, our dredger, our pilots, not the ferries. That isn't the end goal for us. We do intend to look for other alternatives as and when those vessels or vehicles need replacing, but that was kind of an interim solution that we've been able to do and has been really successful. Another really big portion of our emissions have been reduced through the transition to a new cargo terminal. So the old cargo terminal was very inefficient, had really old refrigeration systems. The new cargo terminal that opened in 2020 is far more efficient. We also use that as an opportunity to change a lot of the plant and machinery that went along with that cargo terminal from LPG to electric versions, which has helped reduce our LPG usage by 76%. We've also done a range of smaller projects. So we've been using shore power for our own vessels for quite a number of years. We've done loads and loads of light replacements with LEDs. We've done lots of projects looking at HVAC systems in the Eastern Docks and how we can help reduce our heating usage. So it's been a real range of small and much bigger projects. So the bottom one there, the CMDC 1 and 2 projects, those are the Clean Maritime demonstration projects that the port has undertaken. CMDC 1 was, I think, 2021, and CMDC 2 we just finished in August 2023. And that was to look at the feasibility of electrifying the route. So CMDC 1, we looked at the hybrid ferry that we do currently have on the route with the sister ship arriving in a few months, and we looked at how could we feasibly supply electricity to that hybrid vessel. And CMDC2 kind of took that a step further and looked at fully electric vessels and the feasibility of a green corridor on the route. So we've got a lot more information now about what we need to do and how we can achieve that, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So some of our next steps, things that we've got lined up for the next years to come. So we have an EV charging project that's being installed in first quarter of this year. So although we have transitioned all of our own vehicles to HVO, that was kind of, we have those vehicles now. What can we do immediately to reduce those emissions? And then as and when those vehicles would have been replaced anyway, we can now go to electric alternatives when we've got the chargers in place next month. We've also, the same for vessels. So again, we've put HVO in our vessels immediately because none of them needed replacing immediately. But as and when those vessels would have come up for renewal anyway, we will look at a fully net zero option, so electric, hydrogen, whatever it might be for that specific vessel, we can look at the time for what's going to suit the needs best. A really big portion of that kind of 5% we've got left to get rid of is actually our gas usage in the Western Docks. So the Western Docks is where our cruise terminals are. Our cruise terminals are listed buildings, so it's a little bit trickier to find an alternative for how we can change that, but that is something we intend to look at this year. To get rid of gas usage completely, because we've already got rid of gas usage in the Eastern Docks. So it's just that the Western Docks with our cruise terminals to look at for our gas usage. But the biggest piece of work that we've got going on over the next couple of years is this green corridor electrification of ferries that I just talked about. So this graph here is from CMDC2. So this is based off of a real ferry data. So exactly as the ferries come and go today, what would it look like if they were fully electric from an energy demand point of view? This is for 13 electric ferries, which is the amount we've got on the route. We, from all our ferry operators, have told us that is their intention to go fully electric just because of the distance of the route. It seems to be the most feasible. But obviously, 13 fully electric ferries is a really big amount of energy. We have 52 crossings a day, so it's a lot of energy we'll be talking about, and we only have 45 minutes per turnaround to charge that vessel. So based off of all of the calculations and the modelling you can see here, we've got an estimated peak of about 162 megawatts would be a requirement in the future. To put that in context, the port currently uses between 1 and 2 megawatts generally, depending on what's going on. So it's a really, really huge increase. We don't have anywhere near that much energy coming into the port. And getting it from the grid has got different challenges as well, because we don't think we can get the full amount, and the timelines maybe don't align with when some of the ferries would like to change. From our ferry operators, the first fully electric ferry on the route would be 2029 if we're able to, to stick with their ambition as well. So that's not that long really. to get all of this ready. Obviously, the same has to happen on the other side as well. It's believed that these electric ferries, when they do come, won't be able to make a full route. So Dover, all the way back to Dover on one charge, they would have to charge both ends. So we've been working quite closely with Calais and Dunkirk to how we can work as a system to make this happen, because we all need to work together. So that's a really big project for the port, is acquiring this energy and how we're going to make it work. And alongside that is our internal HV network. So we've got to get the energy to the door, but we've then got to figure out how to get it to those ferries. Our internal HV network is not made up for 162 megawatts, considering we only use about 1 or 2. So we do know we will need to do a whole new HV network in the port while still keeping it operational. So that will bring in its own kind of operational challenges. And then the installation of vessel charging equipment. We need something that can work for all 3 ferry operators, because we don't have dedicated berths, and we need it to be able to charge each ferry to around 30 megawatts in 45 minutes. So that's a big challenge for us, but those are our kind of biggest next steps. So thank you. That's the bit from me. I'll stop sharing now.
Great, thank you so much, Megan. So much going on there. There's many questions. I know I myself I have many questions. Very fascinating. Thank you so much. And we have a couple of questions already in the Q&A. So first one's from Daniel from Cavendish. He's asked, what do we need to do to accelerate the electricity infrastructure we need to connect ports, enabling electric fleets? Currently, the connections are not happening fast enough.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I can definitely confirm that that's the case. And it's not just Dover that's in this situation. You know, I'm sure you can comment to that, Rona, but I think every port's in a similar situation where they need a lot more energy than they currently have. Ports by their nature are at the edge of the country, so we're also at the edge of the electrical network. So I know for us, that's a real problem. We've already tried to see what's available in our, closest substations, nothing there. Can we go back again? And we're having to go back quite far to find anything really that would make an impact. And obviously with that distance comes a much, much greater cost to ports as well. So it is a UK-wide problem. It's definitely not just a Dover problem. We're also at that time, aren't we, where everyone's looking to electrify every industry, not just ports. So there's demand from everyone to have this electricity is really high. So I don't really know what can be done. We've had lots of discussions with DFT and National Grid and UKPN and all of these people about our needs and how much of a difference we can make. You know, if we can electrify this route, we can get rid of 8% of UK international maritime emissions. That's a huge portion taken away. But it's not an easy fix. We need way more electrical networks just in the UK in general. But we also need to look at the way that it's charged as well for the port. So some of the costs that we've been quoted as what it would cost the port to get electricity to our door mean that we will never be able to do it, because it's 10 times more than the port makes a year. It's just not feasible. And when we speak to Calais about the costs they're going to incur, it's a drastically different story. And that makes it really hard for us, the UK, for us to compete. We're in a situation where, as I said, they can't only charge in Calais because they just can't make the trip. They're going to have to charge both ends. But if we were in a situation where they could get all the way, the UK would be missing out on that, because we know from Calais they can get it much, much cheaper than we can, and they can get it much quicker. So I don't know if there's one easy fix. I think everyone in the country is looking for more electricity right now, but I think it needs to be a real focus. And it needs to come much more from government and DFT to help ports kind of move up the queue as well. There's a lot of every time we find a little bit spare in our local area, we go to apply for it and they've given it to someone else. And when we look at how ready maybe that person is to actually take that electricity compared to us and the impact it could have, I do wonder if maybe we need to think about the way that we give out those upgrades, because if we can give that energy to someone like the Port of Dover that can make such a big drop on emissions, then maybe that then there should be pushed up the queue a little bit higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking about it more strategically, because I know there's some numerous ports in our membership who have been quoted, 7+ years waiting to get a connection that they really need.
Yeah, same for us.
Soon. So it's a huge challenge. Next question was, what support and actions are being taken by the power distribution networks outside the port to support your programs and provide adequate power?
Up until recently, we've really struggled to get masses of engagement. I think when we finished the CMDC2 project and we had these numbers of 162 megawatts, and people started to really understand the size of the challenge here, but also with that, the actual positive impact we can have by doing this. We've had a lot more engagement, to be fair, which has been brilliant. But as you just said, Rona, even with that engagement, people talking to us about, oh, well, we can do this and this, the timelines just still aren't aren't good enough. If that's not going to, we have a ferry operator that will have wants their entire fleet electric by 2030, and that's brilliant, and everyone else can meet that, but currently the UK grid can't meet that. So how even with the engagement we're getting out of them, how do we speed this up? Because we really do need to look at that, because we can have such an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would have been so interesting to have Anissa here as well, because I know at Portsmouth they've also, I
Yeah.
think, secured a connection for shore power. So it would have been interesting to hear
Yeah.
her point of view and how they've managed to do that. And then, so just on to the next question, I'll just see. So yeah, you were another question, and this is one on alternative fuels.
Okay.
And it's saying which fuel is in the head of the queue for Port of Dover, and sorry, they're coming in and it's skipping to the top. And how will you charge onshore cover for ferries? So that's probably two questions. But yeah, focusing on looking at the alternative fuel side, is there anything, any fuel at the moment that is really standing out for yourselves moving forward?
So for the ferries, it's definitely electric.
Yeah,
We've already got one ferry operator that's committed to electric with the hybrid vessel, and the other two have made it very clear they intend to do exactly the same. So for ferries, we know that that's kind of what we're working to. We're not really considering anything else, because that's what our ferry operators are doing. Then we as the port need to provide that. For our own vessels, we haven't looked massively specifically into which one for which yet. We obviously are waiting for those vessels to need to be replaced. We don't want to, I think there's a misconception, isn't it? If we replace it now immediately, when that tug still had 5-7 years left on its life, then is that actually the right decision? Because then we're creating more waste. So the decision we've taken is HVO for now, which has been it has been at an increased cost, but we feel that the reduction in emissions has been worth that increased cost. And then as and when those vessels need replacing, we can then look at what's best for them. I think I've seen loads of, I'm always looking out for interesting, other ports, especially in Europe, that are doing cool things with tugs specifically. I always seem to see the most of. So I've seen lots of really interesting ones from both electric and hydrogen tugs that we're definitely interested in, but we've got a couple of years until we need to start thinking about that. So we haven't put much thought into what it will be for our own vessels. We're considering, if we're going to need all this extra electricity for the ferries, and maybe let's think about getting some electricity for our own vessels, just in case that is the choice.
yeah.
But we haven't delved too much into, for our own, the tugs and the dredger, what the option is yet.
Yeah, no, it's early days in some ways for that,
Yeah.
and that's why HVO is presented
Yes,
as a really good interim
it
solution.
has been. Yeah, it's been brilliant.
Yeah. And I suppose this is probably a more a question just firstly on the types of vessels that are coming into Dover. So the
Okay.
we are all vessels calling Dover ferries and cruise vessels, but also if other types of vessels are calling at the port, what is their share on GHG emissions when they're in the port area? So yeah, a question around scope as well,
Yeah.
which is always quite
So as I mentioned, we do have a cargo terminal, and we do also have some marinas. Ferries are the biggest part of our emissions by far. They make up so much more. When you look at the cruise and cargo vessels in comparison in a graph, it's almost you have to make it look like they're even visible, because it is such a difference. When we've been looking at scope, we've been trying to think of it less as like in the port emissions, but actually thinking about the whole system. So we have been including the emissions across the whole channel, mainly because if we're going to electrify, we want to reduce emissions of the whole journey, not just whilst they're in port. So our cargo terminal is quite a bit smaller than lots of the cargo terminals in the UK, so it doesn't make up a huge portion of our emissions. We do have quite small vessels calling here compared to some other cargo terminals. It's also mainly refrigerated, so our cargo terminal is a refrigerated cargo terminal. So we do get a mix of all different types of vessels, but it's much bigger portion is ferries. We
yeah.
have in that 162 megawatts though, that does include enough electricity for shore power for both the cruise and cargo vessels. So it includes fully recharge for ferries, but shore power for cruise and cargo.
Okay, and I might just jump quickly in before I ask another question.
Yeah.
Was just about scope. So I know like scope 3 emissions is a real
Mhm.
challenge for ports because, like you mentioned there, like in terms of your emissions, the port is a very small percentage of that. And so I
Yeah.
just wondered like, how you have what boundaries you have set
Mhm.
in your port to to start looking at scope 3 and what were the challenges
Yeah,
with
so we at Port of Dover have taken the decision that the vessels are not in our scope 3, mainly because we don't feel they fit into one of the 15 greenhouse gas protocol categories. But we also don't want to ignore the vessels because, as I just said, they make up the far biggest portion of the emissions of the system. So that's why we had those three targets. We've got the scope 1, sorry, scope 1 and 2, scope 1, 2, and 3, and then that green corridor one. We have moved all of the vessel emissions into the green corridor rather than scope 3. Our scope 3 still does make up a big portion of our emissions because, as you said, when you think about all of our waste from all of the different vessels, when you think about all the purchases, all the well-to-wake emissions, all of those things is still a really big portion. But we have decided that vessel emissions, whilst at berth, sit into that green corridor pocket. We still intend to do something about that by 2030, but we've kind of made that distinction of what's our scope 3 and what's what we're going to include in the green corridor ban, and mainly because we kind of looked at it as a sphere of our influence kind of point of view as well. We can obviously provide shore power for cruise and cargo vessels, and we can provide recharging for ferries, but we can't guarantee they will use that system. So whereas the scope 3 emissions that come from things we purchase, for example, we can actively choose to purchase from different retailers. So that's kind of where we've made that distinction.
Okay, no, thank you very much. And then another question. So what do you think the role of future fuels could play in the Port of Dover? The energy supply you need is so high and has a lot of complex challenges around cost and availability. Are your regular ferry and cruise operators interested in looking at alternative options?
So for ferry, they're not. They are solely electricity. They do not have, well, as far as they've told us, they do not have any intention of looking at other fuels. They believe electricity is the best fuel for the route, and so that's the kind of the route we've gone down. With regards to how we get that electricity, we are open to anything. We have believe it, we have considered every option you can imagine of how could we get it to the Port of Dover, because we need such a huge amount. There's no silly ideas here. So we really have considered every option and are open to every option. And at that point now where we look at all of these options, however crazy some of them might be, and decide what's going to be the most cost effective so that we can provide that fuel at a price that the ferry operators will want to use it, but also what's going to meet our timelines, and what is also going to be as close to net zero as possible. So we've had lots of discussions about, do we want it from the grid because the grid isn't fully decarbonised? If we got it from different sources, could we have a fully decarbonised electricity source? Because obviously that is the preference for the system as well.
Oh, yeah, no, interesting. And then, yeah, is the port open to the provision of energy as a service from a third party?
Definitely, we are open to every option. Like I said, we have considered a nuclear reactor in the town even.
Yeah.
Obviously that one has, we did quite quickly rule that one out, but we have literally, we are open to anything. We are considering every option because we just want to make sure that the system as a whole can meet this as soon as possible, so there's no silly ideas for how we might get it
Yeah.
here.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's like there's a 45-minute turnaround. So having that electric supply makes sense. But then what are the challenges then with that when you have such a quick turnaround? How, trying to get the ferry plugged in, charged, and ready to leave? What are there any challenges that you've come across when looking at that?
Definitely. So that's one of the big challenges for us, is how do you transfer that amount of power in that amount of time? So we've started to look at different options out there. Obviously, we're going to have to plug in as quickly as you can to make the most out of those 45 minutes. One piece of work that we've started looking at recently is kind of the optimization of our ferry schedule. So up until now, the ferry schedule has been get everyone on and out as quickly as possible because we want to get as many calls in a day, but we've never had to think about energy as a sense of charging time. So we've started looking at some modeling and some planning. If we extend people's stays by 5 minutes, how much can we bring that energy demand down? Is it worth it? Having a look at that kind of schedule from an energy point of view, not just an operational point of view, which has been something that the port's never really had to consider before. It's always been operations first, quick as possible, everybody in and out. But if we can save everybody millions of pounds by bringing that peak down a little bit, then is it something that's worth looking at? So we are doing that alongside trying to find this energy to see how we can make it work. One of the biggest challenges is, as I said, we don't have dedicated berths, and that's the same in Calais and Dunkirk. There's no dedicated berths. So any of the ferry operators can use any of the berths that their vessels fit in. And that means that ideally we want one charger that works for everybody. But that means all three ferry operators need to agree on that charger. It needs to work for everybody. It needs to work for all three ports. And that has been a much bigger challenge than I think any of us thought at the beginning, because we're all on different frequencies. Everybody wants a different voltage. Everybody wants a different location. And how do we, as a system, find something that works the best for everybody, so that we don't all need, three chargers on every berth, because from a cost perspective, that just doesn't make any sense. So that's definitely a challenge that we're still working through at the minute. kind of that alongside the procuring of the energy piece are the two ones that we're trying to work alongside at the same time to make sure that we can hopefully meet that 2030 target.
Yeah, gosh, I think you've really put well into context, like the challenge ahead
Yes.
there for sure. And then, so another question here was, bunkering is a real big challenge, as like, you know, the infrastructure that's required for that is very expensive. So besides HVO, do you have plans for bunkering other alternative fuels or requests from stakeholders? I know you touched on alternative fuels there for your own vessels, but is there any conversations about that? I know Dover's not, it's more like, you know, cruise and ferries, but is there potentially a role in the future for bunkering fuels?
So very, very little bunkering happens in the Port
Yeah.
of Dover even today, mainly because we're so close to France and it is so much cheaper in France that all the ferry operators choose to bunker when they're in Calais or Dunkirk. And the same for cruise. We very, very, you know, now and again might get a cruise vessel that wants to bunker while in port, but it's very, very rare. So because of that, we don't really have any infrastructure for bunkering in the Port of Dover at the minute. We have started looking into that, specifically for LNG for cruise, for example, started looking at logistically what we would need to do and how we would facilitate that in the port. But it's still quite early days because, as I said, we don't even have, you know, MGO bunkering in the port at the minute because everybody does it where it's, you know, it's not that far away and it's a lot cheaper. So it's something that we're conscious about more for kind of cruise and cargo than we are for the ferries,
Yeah.
because obviously the ferries will recharge with electric. So we've definitely started thinking about it for cruise and cargo, but kind of more at the beginning of that journey, I would say, just because we haven't really had any stakeholders kind of looking for that now because they would prefer to do it, you know, in France or where it's much cheaper.
Yeah, that's it. But like it's an interesting question because I know there's many ports there who haven't traditionally been bunkering ports who
Hmm.
will start to look at this as an
Yes.
opportunity. Um, so next question, what about using, yeah, battery storage capabilities on each ferry? You mentioned that I think one was a hybrid ferry in
Hmm.
the CMDC stage one, but the VAS, is that not a feasible idea logistically or financially?
Yeah, so
Um,
the hybrids I think have just below 9 megawatts batteries on board. I think it's about 8.8, 8.9. I'm not totally sure on the top of my head. And the electric ferries will obviously have more batteries on board to be able to get to the distance. One of the things I said is they can't go from Dover all the way back to Dover or from Calais all the way back to Calais, and that's just because from a logistical point of view, they couldn't have enough batteries on board to get enough charge to do that because it would take up too much space and the weight and all of those kind of like vessel criterias that a naval architect has looked at. So we're very aware that we'll need a considerable amount of battery storage, you know, on site in Dover, as well to kind of smooth out those peaks. If everyone remembers that graph I showed a minute, you saw how peaky it was, and that's not really an ideal situation to have. You would prefer a much smoother energy demand. So we have looked at that quite extensively. One of the kind of restrictions that comes into that for us is physical space. If anyone's been to the Port of Dover, we are incredibly constrained from a land perspective. We've got the White Cliffs that side and the sea that side, so there's nowhere to go on the port to make it any bigger, and we don't have very much space in the eastern docks, which is where the ferries are, to put those batteries. So we've started thinking about, could we put that in the western docks? Is there any land we can use over there? Do we need to look at a little bit further out? Because if we can't fit it in, you know, in the actual port boundary, can we put it somewhere else in Dover? So batteries are being considered they're very important, we think, to play a huge part in this transition just because of the peakiness of that load,
yeah.
especially for somewhere like cruise and cargo. We at the minute have three completely separate electrical inputs into the port, one to the western docks where cruise is, one to the central area where cargo is, and one into the eastern docks, and they're not connected. So the one to our cruise terminal is the one that's the hardest to kind of upgrade, if that makes sense, just because of all of the infrastructure around that area is listed, so it's much more complicated. And so we do think the batteries will play a big part on the cruise side of it as well for us, just to help us bolster that supply, so that we can provide shore power to cruise vessels much sooner.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you touched on that. Yeah, space as well, not another major
Space,
challenge in
yeah.
ports as well. I've just noticed that Anissa has managed to join. I don't think her video is there, but Anissa, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and give us a run through of what is happening.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Sorry about these IT issues. Can
No
can you
problem, it
guys hear me?
happens.
I'm doing via the phone.
Yeah, we can hear you okay.
Hello. Oh, perfect. Oh, hello. So yeah, I'm Anissa. I'm the port principal project manager. And yeah, I had like a short presentation, but I don't know if we have time now for me to kind of run through the presentation. I can just give a quick update where the port is regarding improving the sustainability at our ports, the current strategies, and then the master plan as one of our main parts at the port, who is like improving very much in a very good speed our quality of the environment and the sustainability. So yeah, I'm just kind of, I can't see you guys, so I need like guidance from you how you want me to give an update.
Well, like you said, I don't know if Maxine's able to share the slides for you, or if you just want to go ahead and go through what you're currently working on at Portsmouth. We've discussed a lot about shore power
Yeah,
and
yeah.
electrification. I know that's something that you're working on at Portsmouth. So maybe yeah, a bit of information on that would be
Yeah,
useful.
yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, we just completed a master plan for the next 20 years at Portsmouth International Port, and then we are very much keen into being the environmental pioneer. So this means that being like ready and sustainable, including our net zero plans by 2030. So some of these plans, the short-term ones between like 12 and 24 month plans, include the green hydrogen energy systems of the shipping and the hydrogen port ecosystem. This part of the UK shape projects, processing the freight away from the port and reducing the impact on the road networks. Smart freight gates, this is something that we are currently working on, the smart passenger bookings as well. In the next 5 years, our ambition is to get and reach the carbon net zero by 2030 and become one of the first UK ports with a zero emission by 2050. We are aiming to achieve this one by installing the shore power project, which we are currently working at the ports, and then obviously having a hybrid system such as LNG barges for the shoreside power to power some of our main ferry providers. And then the net energy provider from who is like the solar PV. We have like solar PV services on all of our roofs at the port. We have some major schemes which are being undertaken now as we speak. Very happy to share the slides with the participants so we can see more in details what these projects are about. We just completed the building of our terminal extension, which is one of the first UK projects which aims to be like very sustainable A++ energy, which means that it's like net carbon neutral. So this facility is around £70 million and was delivered by Knight Brown. So what makes this kind of sustainably positive and natural? So the most important parts are we are bringing underfloor heating powered by the seawater. And then it's going to have like energy generated by the solar PVs. It's going to have sky gardens for the passengers as well, so like a lot of open space. We are having a lot of green walls as well. So there are like around 4 green walls internally, and then 2 green walls externally on the new terminal. The extension, as I mentioned on the presentation, you can see there is like another floor heating powered seawater, which is like a pilot project and still in progress, the installation. And then we have the terminal building extension on the solar PVs, which is like again another input on the solar PVs. So the shoreside power is another project, which is like one of the main projects that's been undertaken now at the port. Currently, we did undertake a bidding by the government, and we got some funding, around 20+ million funding. We're progressing with the project as we speak. We're bringing on board an electrical integrator, and then we have around 50 megawatts, which is going to be shared on our multi-user, multi-berth, and multi-frequency project, and it's going to be spread on all of our 3 main berths to provide power for the cruises and the ferries as well at the same time. So yeah, if you guys could have shared the slides, I'd like a lot of information about this project, but happy to provide any questions if there are on the room.
Yeah,
answer any
thank you.
questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm sure we
speaking a little bit like on the air because it's difficult. I'm on the phone and you guys don't have the presentation, but I'm very happy to share the presentation at the end of the call.
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you. I'm sure we can we'll send round the presentation slides along with the recording so they can see all
Perfect.
the information there. But thank you so much, Anissa. It sounds as well, same with Megan, there's a large portfolio of projects going on.
Yes, thank you. Really sorry about this kind of IT issue.
No problem, it happens, doesn't it? It's what happens when we rely on it
Thank
so
you.
much. And so I'll just look back to the chat, see if there's questions that I can put to both of you here. So one question was, which would be for both of you, would be it's from Paul. I'm not sure where you are, but you've said we as an organisation are in a position to discuss both energy provision and infrastructure at berth into the UK market. Oh, and then we would welcome the opportunity to discuss this in more detail. So Paul Barker, I'm not sure what organisation you're from, but that's thank you for putting that in there. And so another question was, does the port have land available for further renewable installations such as wind, solar, etc.? And that I suppose that would, first put that to you, Anissa, and then Megan as well. You can jump in after.
So currently, I'm aware that the port don't have any plans regarding any type of this energy. Can you please repeat the question? I couldn't hear it like properly.
Yes, of course. It said,
Yeah.
does the port have land available for further renewables installation? Because I know Megan touched on that as well, that available land in port and space in ports is a big challenge. So yeah, just touching on that about renewables installation.
Yeah. So this is like kind of the major issue that we have at the port. So the space is a luxury here at Portsmouth International Port. So the master plan is based on the environmental sustainability, but as well of us finding like more pockets of land around Portsmouth. So yeah, it's not like much space for like any additional renewable energy at the port. But we're working with our team in the master plan, just trying to find like additional pockets of land and see if we can improve this aspect.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know you briefly touched on that, Megan, about in terms of battery storage, but in terms of available land and space at the port for future projects, what does that look like at Dover being,
Yeah, so there's something we've considered quite a lot recently. So we don't have any spare land that isn't being used at all. So one of the things we're looking at the minute is, can we put solar on every single roof that we have? Which roofs, feasibly can take solar panels? Let's look at that. And we've also thought about, we've got a lot of space, kind of like for traffic queuing for the lanes as they wait to get on their ferries. Could we cover those in canopies and then put solar on those canopies? Wind's a bit of a tricky one for us. The White Cliffs are an area of stunning natural beauty, and we can't obviously hamper that view with a big wind turbine in the way, even though from a wind perspective that would be brilliant for us. We're very windy down here, but that's not something that we believe is feasible realistically. We've seen some more I think they're kind of like vertical wind turbines that are much smaller, so possibly something like that might work for us. Something else we've thought about and tend to look at a lot in a lot more detail is kind of like that wave and tidal energy as well. We have quite significant tidal streams in the port. So is there a way we can harness that as well? Solar so far is kind of the easiest for us in the sense that we've been able to just put it on buildings. It is very sunny down here. But a lot of our buildings and structures are listed, so that adds a lot of complexities into this. So that 1.3 megawatt array that I spoke about went on our new cargo terminal because it's a brand new building and there was no kind of issues around listed structures. We were able to just cover that completely in solar. So working through how we can bring that across the wider port is something that needs a little bit more work. We've started and intend to look at a little bit more this year.
Okay, thank you very much. And so I suppose like solar is potentially one of those low-hanging fruits for lots of ports to start off their decarbonisation journey. And then another question, this is directed to the Port of Dover, but it'd be the same for Portsmouth as well. And it says, you mentioned the outsourcing of renewable energy. Is there any feasibility study for a smart grid in the port? That's
Shall I go first? Yeah, I can go first. Yes, there has been. As part of the CMDC2 project, we worked with a couple of different organisations, but Schneider and SSE were two of the consortium members in that project, and they looked at exactly that. We're likely to need a smart grid in the Port of Dover. How can that work? And they worked with our electrical engineers to create sort of ETAP models and have a look at all the things we'll need from an electrical network perspective. It's a little bit out of my area of expertise, but I know it's definitely something that we're kind of assuming has to happen realistically for this to work. It's kind of that will be happening. Not sure yet. We're very aware we'll need one. We just need to look at how we make that work.
Yeah. And for yourselves at Portsmouth, Anissa, is this something that you have considered or will consider down the line?
Can you repeat the question, please? Sorry, I didn't
Yes.
get the question at the
No,
beginning. Thank you. The line
of
is
course.
very bad.
Yeah, no problem
Thank
at all.
you.
That's fine. It says, yeah, is there any feasibility study for a smart grid in your port?
So yeah, so we are as part of the master planning, we have a lot of plans regarding the smart port and mainly like the smart freight. So we can introduce like one kind of IT program, so we can undertake the check-in ahead of the time. So this is kind of help our mainly like our decarbonization plans for inside the port. So this is something that we're working on as part of our master planning. But again, it's like plans who are being developed, but we are doing like a lot of feasibility study on this element. So yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I don't know if anybody else has any other questions that they wish to pop in the Q&A function there. Oh, was there? There was maybe one more there. Oh, another question that I might have missed was, have you considered mobile hydrogen power units as a source of electricity? I know you touched on, mentioned hydrogen there, Anissa. I might not have picked up very well. Is that something you would look at? Oh, can you hear me okay? Oh, maybe not. Maybe I'll go to you, Megan.
Yeah, that's fine. Short answer, yes. Yeah, that's definitely one of the options we've looked at of how can we get electricity here. It's still on, it's still on the card. It's not been ruled out. It's not been ruled in, but there's obviously lots of complexities that come with having hydrogen when you're this close to a town. We are a trust port as well, so linking to the community is really important to us. We really want to make sure that whatever we do, the community are on board with, and that works for everybody. So, hydrogen, it doesn't always go down as well when we mention that as an option when talking about that in groups, but it definitely hasn't been ruled out, and it is something we're looking at. Like I said, there's no silly options for how we can get this power here because we need so
Yeah.
much. We're pretty much open to anything.
Yeah, looking at every angle.
Yes.
And Anissa, I don't know if you were able to pick up on that question there.
Hello. Yeah, if you can repeat the question, please. Sorry, this was like a little bit of a break in there.
Yeah, no, of course.
I heard something regarding the LNG, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome to touch on that as well. And then it was, the question was talking about, mobile hydrogen power units as a source of electricity. By all
Yeah.
means, touch on the LNG angle as well, because we haven't discussed that yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so we are currently working with one of our main ferry providers, ferry companies here at the port, and we are just discussing the bringing in here ships who are like, and they're already kind of done, so but we want to power them from the port. We're going to like the LNG power ships or hybrid ones. So this is something, a project that we are currently working at the moment. And then, yeah, we are aiming by 2025 to have on board hybrid ships who are going to be powered by LNG, and then when they are on the shore side, they are going to have to be powered by electricity by the shore side project. So yeah, this is like our next kind of project that we're currently working.
Oh, great, thank you very much. And I've just picked up on the time there. We've got 5 minutes left, and I know that we'll very abruptly be kicked out at 10 on the dot. So maybe I will last call for any additional questions that you may have that you wish to pop in the chat, and if not, I'll maybe close with some concluding remarks. I think the main theme of today has been about electrification. I think that's the biggest challenge for ports going forward at the moment, and you both really highlighted well the challenges that are there. Like Megan, you say there's about securing the energy, but also looking at how you can improve efficiency for those tight vessel calls and the timings. So it's a major theme is trying to get the capacity that the ports need to be able to fuel the transition. We also touched on alternative fuels there as well. We've got many ports around the UK that have, including Dover there, that have looking at HVO. Anissa mentioned LNG there. But yeah, still early days in terms of what one of the main fuels will be of the future for sure. But thank you all so much for coming along today, and thank you so much, Megan, for your wonderful presentation. And Nissa, I'm so sorry with your technical difficulties, but I'm sure we will.
Yes, sorry about that.
No problem at all. We will send round your slides so that everybody can get more.
Yes, please, thank you. I
idea.
did send them to Maxim yesterday, so if you can share them, I would appreciate it.
Perfect, that's good. So we can learn a bit more about the projects that you're handling at Portsmouth. So yeah, thank you
Perfect.
very much, everyone. And it's my last comment would be a date for all your diaries. So Waterfront are holding the UK Ports Conference on Wednesday, the 22nd of May to Thursday, the 23rd of May. So that is a great opportunity for you to come along. I'm sure sustainability will be a major topic at that conference. So another date for all your diaries. But thank you very much, everyone. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having
Bye.
me. Thank you.